Hi, V from Movies Hunter here. The Chaser from 2008 is based on the true story of Young Chul, the notorious serial killer who managed to elude the law time and time again. This is a story of a man who preyed on the vulnerable, targeting innocent women and taking their lives without any remorse. As the sun sets in South Korea, former detective turned pimp Jong-hoo is faced with a nightmarish reality. Two of his precious girls have gone missing and he is drowning in debt. But just as he thinks things can't get any worse, he gets a call from a client with an unusual request. He sends Seung-hee, one of his most reliable girls, to the address only to find out that the client had sinister intentions. The client wanted to record Seung-hee secretly, but she quickly saw through his game and called him a pervert. The client, feeling his ego hurt, lashed out at Seung-hee. When Jong-hoo arrived on the scene, he found the client had beaten Seung-hee to a pulp. Jong-hoo, always looking for an opportunity to make a quick buck, attacked the client and demanded a huge sum of money in return. Seung-hee had had enough. She did not want to work in this dark and dangerous world anymore. As they drove back, she confronted Jong-hoo about the missing girls and suggested they track them down. But Jong-hoo, consumed by greed, didn't care about their disappearance. What an idiot. Seung-hee, furious with his lack of compassion, walked away in the middle of the road. Just when Jong-hoo thought that night couldn't get any worse, his assistant called with news that a client had rejected all their girls and now there was nobody left to send. In a moment of desperation, Jong-hoo forced Mi-jin, who is currently on leave due to being sick, to meet the client. What a great employer! Now, despite her protests, Jong-hoo wouldn't hear it. He's all like, "No, I gotta hear you, like, just go fucking bitch. As our hero Jong-hoo cruises down the road, he stumbles upon a shocking discovery. A cell phone belonging to one of his missing girls. The call log reveals a dark truth. The last person to speak to the missing girl was a client of his. With his detective skills in full gear, Jong-hoo deduces that the client is involved in trafficking these young women. But instead of jumping in headfirst, he devises a plan. He asks Mi-jin to go with the client and send him the address once they arrive. Jong-hoo turns to his trusted old police task group for help, but a bizarre twist of events has left them unable to assist. The mayor of Seoul has been attacked with feces. Yeah, weird, but it basically means that it leaves the group preoccupied. Meanwhile, Mi-jin right here reluctantly follows the shady client, Young-min, to his residence. But as soon as she's inside, she realizes the danger she's in and desperately tries to reach Jong-hoo. With no cell service in the bathroom, Mi-jin desperately searches for a way to send a message for help, but every window is blocked by a wall. And just when she thinks she's found a way out, Young-min locks the door, trapping her. The fear sets in as Young-min pulls out a bag full of torturous tools. "Please let me go," Mi-jin pleads through tears. "I have a daughter. She's just 6 years old." But her pleas fall on deaf ears as Young-min, a ruthless killer, prepares to end her life with a cold, sharp chisel. Mi-jin fights for her life, but it's a losing battle as Young-min strikes her with a hammer, rendering her unconscious. Just as he is about to carry out his sick plan, the sound of voices interrupts him. An elderly couple from the local church arrives, asking about Mr. Park, who they believe lives in the house. Young-min tries to play it cool, insisting no one by that name lives there. But the couple recognizes Mr. Park's dog and begins to suspect something is amiss. Little do they know, they have just walked into a deadly trap set by Young-min. In a swift, heartless move, he invites the couple inside and takes their lives without a second thought. Whew! Meanwhile, Jong-hoo right here tries reaching Mi-jin but to no avail. His gut tells him something is not right, so he sets out to find her. But as fate would have it, Young-min and Jong-hoo cross paths when Young-min's attempt to ditch the couple's car ends in a collision with Jong-hoo's vehicle. In an effort to make amends, Jong-hoo asks for Young-min's phone number to pay for the damage, but Young-min brushes it off and tries to make a quick getaway. That's when Jong-hoo spots the telltale signs of blood on Young-min's shirt and the pieces begin to fall into place. He dials the number he had tried reaching earlier and Young-min's phone starts ringing. With Jong-hoo hot on his heels, Young-min makes a run for it, but it's a losing battle. Jong-hoo catches up, delivering a brutal beating, before bringing Young-min back to his car. But before he can act further, the police arrive and take both men into custody. Now at the station, Young-min coolly confesses to having committed a staggering 9 murders, but just as the officers start to question him further, Jong-hoo's former partners show up and demand Young-min to be handed over to them. Now, on the way out, Young-min drops a bombshell. He believes that one of his victims, Mi Jin, may still be alive, but the officers brush him off as a liar. As they interrogate him, Yeomin reveals the details of his crimes. Basically, after killing his victims with a chisel, he would drain their blood and display their bodies like pigs in a butcher shop. Ugh. Anyway, all the officers are horrified except for Jung-hoo, who remains skeptical of Young-min's confession. To prove the confession, the officers want to match the DNA of the blood on Young-min's shirt with Mi Jin's. So Jung-hoo and an officer head to Mi Jin's last known address to collect a sample. But instead of finding Mi Jin, they stumble upon her daughter, Yeon-ji, all alone in the house. Jung-hoo takes it upon himself to look after her. As they continue to investigate, the police learn that Young-min has been arrested for murder before, but was set free due to a lack of evidence. Meanwhile, Jung-hoo follows up on a lead in Young-min's hometown, where he discovers that the murderers served 3 years in jail for attacking his own nephew. Later, Jung-hoo learns that there is a woman who was hired by Young-min a long time ago and she is still alive. She tells Jung-hoo a shocking revelation, which is Young-min is impotent. Jung-hoo's assistant works tirelessly to find Young-min's hideout. When they finally locate it, Jung-hoo rushes to the scene, but Mi Jin is nowhere to be found. Instead, he discovers strange religious drawings on the room's walls. Yoon-ji, who is waiting outside, spots a woman who resembles her mother and decides to follow her. Meanwhile, Young-min is being interrogated by a police officer about the murders he has confessed to. The interrogator asks if his impotency is the reason behind the killing of prostitutes, but Young-min loses his cool and attacks the interrogator. When Jung-hoo returns to his car, he realizes that Yoon-ji is missing. He rushes her to the hospital after finding out she was in an accident. He is frustrated and angry, so he heads to the police to confront Young-min. The officers turn a blind eye as Jung-hoo unleashes his anger on Young-min. Finally, after some intense beating and intense breathing, Young-min gives the location of where he has buried the bodies. The police, of course, sent their entire force to search the area, but Jung-hoo has a gut feeling that Young-min is just stalling for time and has given them a false lead. The prosecutor is shocked to find out about Young-min's injuries, and he's not going to stand for it. He demands the police chief to release Young-min immediately and is not going to wait around for the results of a DNA test. He knows that the police are just trying to save face, so he demands that Jung-hoo be arrested for injuring Young-min. And just like that, the officers arrest Jung-hoo and take him to the station. Look at his face, his poor little face. But Jung-hoo's not going down without a fight. On the way to the station, he attacks the officers and causes a dangerous accident. With the help of a former colleague, he breaks free and sets his sights on Young-min, who has now been released. Meanwhile, Mi Jin has regained consciousness and managed to escape from the house. She runs to a nearby shop and is desperate for help. She tries calling Jung-hoo, but of course he is on the run from the police, the dumb police, and he can't answer. And that's when Young-min walks into the same shop looking for some cigarettes. The shopkeeper doesn't know that Young-min is, the killer, but she tells him about Mi Jin's story and asks him to stay and protect them until the police arrive. Okay, unfortunately she had already called the police, but the nearest officers are fast asleep on the job. Looks like we're on our own until the cavalry arrives, Young-min, this gross guy, says with a smirk. So Young-min, the freaking mean-ass dragon beast-ass, convinces the shopkeeper to hand over a hammer, promising to protect her with it. Little does the shopkeeper know the hammer will be used as a weapon of terror. As Young-min kills the shopkeeper and finds Mi Jin resting inside, he launches a merciless attack on her, relentlessly striking her with a hammer until she takes her last breath. Jung-hoo rushes to the shop after hearing the sirens, only to find the police have already arrived and, saw the blood-soaked scene. The sight of the crime scene is too much to bear, as Jung-hoo realizes he was too late to save Mi Jin. Meanwhile, Young-min makes his escape back to Mr. Park's house and adds Mi Jin's severed head and hands to his collection in the fish tank. The police are now under pressure to catch the killer and find Young-min, as the story is splashed all over the news. Jung-hoo returns to the scene of the crime feeling helpless and lost. As he checks his phone, he finds Mi Jin's last message, an apology, and a fear-filled plea to quit the job before it's too late. With a heavy heart, Jung-hoo follows another lead to the local church. There, he notices the statue matches the drawings from Young-min's old room and realizes the connection between Mr. Park and Young-min. Determined to bring the murderer to justice, Jung-hoo visits Mr. Park's studio only to come face to face with Young-min, who was about to make his escape from the city. Jung-ho grips Young-min with a fierce determination and drags his ass back inside, fueled by a burning desire for revenge. Yum. With every punch he throws, Jung-ho feels a small glimmer of satisfaction for the life taken from him and Mi-jin. But as he stares into the fish tank, his heart shatters as he sees the gruesome reminder of what was taken from him. He can't rest until justice is served. With a roar of anger, roar, Jung-ho continues his relentless attacks on Young-min. Punch, 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 roar. Bloodied and exhausted, Jung-ho refuses to back down. He won't stop until the person responsible for Mi-jin's death is punished. But just as he is about to deliver the final blow, the sound of sirens cuts through the air and the police have arrived. As the officers struggle to contain the crazed Jung-ho, Young-min is finally arrested for his heinous crimes. And when the police excavate the yard, they find several bodies of people buried by Young-min. With justice served and a heavy heart, Jung-ho makes his way to the hospital. He sits quietly beside Yeon-ji, holding her hand and reflecting on the path of destruction that led him there. And so this was the story of the chaser. I'm gonna see you in the next hunt. I was bitten by a wasp today and I don't feel good. Goodbye. I love you.